Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping right into the fascinating, incredibly high-stakes business strategies that brands use to dominate one of the absolute most competitive spaces in your local grocery store, the U.S. Latin sauce market. We are talking about the salsa wars. It's this wild arena where, honestly, having great flavor is just the baseline. The real battle? It's fought and won through brilliant, highly targeted branding. To really wrap your head around the scale of this war, think about a recent taste test done by The Kitchen. They sat down and tried 12 different jars, and their main takeaway was just how challenging it is to find the one you actually want to stock in your pantry. And, this perfectly hits the nail on the head regarding the ultimate problem every single food brand faces today. The salsa aisle is just incredibly crowded. So how on earth do you convince a shopper to pick up your jar out of the dozens sitting right next to it? Okay, let's dive into this. To understand how these companies win your hard-earned dollar, we're going to break down 6 distinct branding pillars: the saturated market, heritage roots, regional pride, purpose-driven, corporate scale, and future flavors. Starting right off with pillar number 1, the saturated market, navigating consumer demand. The modern buyer's mindset is a serious tightrope for any brand to walk right now. The market report data shows that we are demanding a whole lot, all at once. Because of our busy lifestyles, we want extreme convenience, right? Ready-to-use sauces that save us time. But we totally refuse to sacrifice flavor. We demand bold, authentic, traditional ethnic influences. And on top of all that, we expect clean labels, functional health benefits, and artisanal premium quality. It's a tall order. So, how exactly do brands prove they're actually authentic? Well, they rely on our second pillar, heritage roots, selling authenticity and history. Just look at how this timeline builds over the early 20th century. You've got legacy brands like Herdez, founded way back in 1914 in Mexico City, which built a massive brand identity entirely on traditional recipes and fresh local ingredients. Then, just a few years later, in 1917, La Victoria introduces the very first jarred salsa in the U.S., called Salsa Brava, right in L.A. Skip to 1947, and David Pace founds Pace Foods in Paris, Texas. These companies, they aren't just selling you tomatoes and peppers. They are projecting absolute authenticity by reminding you, hey, we've literally been doing this for over a century. And actually, speaking of David Pace, his origin story is an absolute masterclass in brand education. Pace grew up in Louisiana, learning his family's syrup business. When he started making salsa after serving as a World War II pilot, he quickly recognized he needed to educate a brand new American consumer base. So what did he do? He coined the term picante, the Spanish word for spicy, and slapped it right on his labels. He used his food industry background to define a foreign word for a domestic market, essentially creating a brand new category of shelf-stable sauce from scratch. But hey, what if you don't have a century of history to lean on? That brings us to our third pillar, regional pride, bottling a specific geography. If you can't sell time, you sell place. Back in 1997, a guy named Roy Solomon started 505 Southwestern, and he anchored his entire brand identity to a highly specific premium location. I mean, the name of 505 literally honors the Albuquerque area code. And the brand's magic ingredient isn't just some generic pepper, it is specifically fire-roasted green chilies from the Hatch Valley. By bottling a specific geography, 505 created a hyper-local premium brand identity that allowed them to grow nationally. They even fund local agriculture scholars in New Mexico today, which is pretty awesome. Now, our fourth pillar takes a completely different path to market dominance, purpose-driven philanthropy as a differentiator. Take Newman's Own, for example. Paul Newman and A.E. Hotner started this in 1982 just by giving homemade dressing to their friends. They put in a mere $40,000 in seed money and slapped a playful joke right on the label that read, "Fine foods since February." But beneath that humble, humorous branding is an incredibly powerful differentiator. They donate 100% of their after-tax profits to child-focused charities. And the crucial point here is the massive scale of this impact: $600 million. That is the staggering figure Newman's Own has generated for charities, like the Serious Fun Children's Network, entirely through grocery sales. Think about it. When you're paralyzed by choice in the salsa aisle, that philanthropic brand promise is a brilliant, feel-good tiebreaker that secures real customer loyalty. Which leads us right into the fifth pillar, corporate scale, the acquisition strategy. Because eventually, these authentic, regional, and niche brands we've been talking about, they attract the corporate giants. It's a classic David versus Goliath reality in the grocery business. Massive food conglomerates eventually buy up these independent brands to leverage their massive marketing and distribution networks. You've got Campbell's Soup Company buying Pace Foods from its sole owner, B&G Foods acquiring Ortega, and La Victoria is now part of Megamex Foods, which is actually a joint venture between Hormel and Herdez. To really give you a sense of just how valuable these brand identities are, consider this massive number, $1.115 billion. That is exactly what Campbell's Soup Company paid to acquire Pace Foods back in 1995. They weren't just buying salsa recipes, right? They were buying a fiercely loyal customer base that Pace had spent a half-century building. Just listen to David Wenner, the CEO of B&G Foods, when they bought Ortega in 2003. He explicitly notes that Ortega met their criteria because it's a recognized niche brand offering high-quality products and enjoying high margins. This elegantly illustrates the whole corporate playbook. For conglomerates, it's just way more profitable and efficient to buy established brand loyalty than to try and build a new salsa brand from scratch in an already saturated market. Finally, let's look at our sixth pillar, future flavors, where the market is going next. Synthesizing the latest market data, we see that Millennial and Gen Z consumers are totally changing the rules. They still demand the authentic heritage we discussed earlier, for sure, but now it absolutely must align with modern dietary trends. Brands have to adapt their identities. We're talking clean labels with no artificial preservatives, getting organic and non-GMO certifications, and ensuring allergen-friendly formulas. Plus, there's a massive craving out there for bold, spicy fusion flavors.
A perfect, specific example of this adaptation is Texas Pete. They recently launched a habanero buffalo wing sauce. By merging traditional Latin heat, like aged habanero peppers, with a classic American food staple like buffalo sauce, they are positioning themselves directly in front of a projected 30% growth trend in Latin-inspired flavors over the next 4 years. It's fusion branding at its absolute finest.
And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate balancing act for these companies. On one side, you have Goya Foods leaning heavily into legacy, authenticity with household staples like sofrito and adobo. But on the other side, historic brands like La Costeña are evolving, launching products like an organic salsa verde with zero artificial preservatives. They are successfully adapting to clean label trends without losing an ounce of their heritage identity. So we've seen how history, geography, philanthropy, and corporate scaling all play absolutely massive roles in the branding of the food we eat. The next time you stand in front of that crowded grocery shelf, take a closer look at the labels. They're all fighting a quiet war for your attention. As consumer demands continue to shift toward health, convenience, and fusion, what do you think will be the next billion-dollar brand strategy to win your chip? Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning what's in your pantry.